Yes.
All right, thank you. Welcome to the Law Committee meetings. Gentlemen, we're already late. Sorry, gotta get going. Welcome to the Law Committee meeting. Majority, would you mind taking the roll, please?
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Platsky?
Present?
Cunningham is excused tonight. Mr. Bergdorf?
Present.
Feeney?
Here.
Kuhn?
Here.
Mayo?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
Ricard?
Present.
And Whalen?
Present.
8 present, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you so much. May I have a motion on previous minutes?
Motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. Thank you, Mr. Feeney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Passes unanimously. I'm going to jump by special request to item 9, local law K. Mr. Reed, would you like to say a couple words on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm trying to find local law K in my agenda.
The local law, the County of Albany
There we
banning
go.
deadly
Here it
weapons,
is.
dangerous
You know,
instruments, explosive devices, and poisonous gases from Albany County facilities.
Indeed, I think, again, this is a fairly simple and straightforward law promoting public safety and letting folks know what they cannot bring into our county buildings. Helping both visitors, our employees, that work in county buildings. And, went through public comment. No one spoke on it, but I've only gotten positive responses to it. So would hope the committee would consider recommending it and sending it to a full vote.
Excellent. Are there any questions for Legislator Reedy? Yes, Mr. Bergdorf.
I have two questions. I told that Justin I just had one. I've talked to so many people carry pocket knives. And I know that, I think last time we were told that switchblades or gravity knives were prohibited. But does that stop anyone from having a lock blade knife that you open manually that's with a 4-inch blade? Because lots of people who put that in their pocket as part of getting dressed in the morning.
Mr. Reedy? Or Majority Council?
Yeah, I think we discussed this last time a bit as well.
Yeah.
It would not include a pocket knife. It includes things like gravity knives, butterfly knives, things that are otherwise illegal.
Otherwise, okay.
Swiss Army knife is safe.
Well, I mean, there are people who carry more than a Swiss Army knife, on a regular basis, more than you would realize. That's question number one. Question number two, does this include the Albany Airport?
No question.
Because it just occurred to me, when we had the airport guys here, that I have flown with my wife a number of times around the United States and checked in a shotgun because the destination we were going to allows, you can shoot trap, you can shoot sheep, you can shoot sporting clays, and there are people who travel to competitions with a firearm. And there's a whole procedure with the TSA in which you got to go up to the counter, you got to declare, I have a firearm. They take you over to a separate counter, you get the best service that you would ever get at the airport. So a TSA officer comes over, they inspect what you have, they inspect that there's no ammunition with it. You sign, they close it, they lock it, then they take it back and they x-ray it, and then when you get to your destination, it's there. Yeah. So my question is, can someone bring a firearm to the airport for what is legal transportation under the FAA and TSA?
Understood. Mr. Peter, are you addressing this with an
Yeah,
answer?
it seems to be that it sort of says physical possession, and I don't know, and I would assume that, like, for example, like checked luggage, since you don't have it, like, you're not carrying the thing, it's sort of off would take away from it.
But you are carrying the
We
thing
can
in
certainly
there.
clarify that. I don't think that was contemplated in the
Okay.
in the intent, certainly, because obviously FAA regulations being what they are, TSA regulations being what they are, it's a whole separate animal. So, I mean, subject to the sponsor's consent, we could exempt the
I mean,
airport from it.
That's sort of,
Just so you're clear, is this superseded? I mean, whatever we do would be superseded.
That's
Yes, it would be
Yeah.
superseded by federal
You
and
know.
But not when you
regulations,
first
but-
enter.
but yeah, but that's.
yeah,
but
you could
the-
still enter onto airport property theoretically with
That's what I was
a
gonna say, you're
gun,
going
whereas you
through-
may not be able to by TSA or FAA regulations.
You're going through Albany County to get to the TSA regulations if you want to
Right.
split hairs, right? So
It's
aren't you,
also-
It's only for county buildings, though. You could theoretically enter onto property for it.
And it's also not just the airport building per se, because the federal government, if you want to travel to Canada, you have to check your guns and have them registered on this side of the border. And sometimes that checkpoint is in the airport. So it's not necessarily in the terminal, it might be one of the other buildings, because that's where I've had to go on occasion. So if there's a general exemption to be placed,
Yeah.
it should be
That's
the airport.
certainly not the
If you're-
intent of this.
If your council could work out something with Arnis to accommodate that,
Yeah, I would imagine anything, an exemption just for properties that are county-owned but leased by the airport authority, a straight exemption for that would cover it.
I would.
But yeah, we can certainly follow up with Arnis.
I could probably give you, not just the airport authority, leased out. I mean, in theory, you could lease out some of the other pieces of property. Well, I guess there's a discussion about private office buildings, you know, county buildings becoming private. If somebody leases it from the county, it becomes their rules as to who they want in and outside of the building. It's leased to them and we don't control it. So we can make it a little bit broader than just the airport.
We could discuss that with the sponsor, certainly.
can you work through that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would
So,
have
Mr.
never
Reed?
thought about it had the airport guys not been
Yeah,
here.
really.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a substantial enough change
check
to
guns
prevent
through
anything moving forward.
Arizona.
So, yeah, can we do this change
Yeah.
on the fly and vote on this going forward with the
Yeah,
idea that we're
I
in
have
it?
no- I
Okay.
have no
Yeah, it's
problem
just
with that.
removing one
That's
minimum set of buildings from the.
Okay.
Airports.
Any other questions for Mr. Reading? Mr. Peters?
I'm gonna make a motion to move this if there's no
Knew
further
you
questions.
would, okay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, great.
Move it favorably?
Yeah, move favorably.
Yes, it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Reading. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, let's hop to items 14 through 18.
Good evening.
Welcome, if you could,
So all of these are, it's 5 grants, all of them are renewals. The first of which, number 14, is the Highway Safety Grant. This is for $139,350, which are all federal funds from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The grant is administered by the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, and it funds our bureau chief and her assistant, their salaries, as well as travel, and there's a line in there for the purchase of some equipment. So the line's a little bit higher than it was last year.
okay. Any questions on item 14? Is there a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Feeney, thank you. Second by Mr. Ricard, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. Item 15.
Item 15 is the motor vehicle theft grant. These funds come from DCJS, they're state grants, this is a joint grant with APD. It provides funds for 2 ADAs. The supervisor gets a smaller amount, the primary ADA on the grant gets most of that money, and then this grant is to reduce the incidence of motor vehicle theft and motor vehicle insurance fraud within the county. And the idea is that we coordinate with other police agencies and other jurisdictions to identify people who are engaging in these activities.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Horn? Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
quick
Horn.
question. How do you, with a DA, how do you actually, could you give us for instance of how you would attack motor vehicle theft and insurance fraud?
It's by having a dedicated ADA who's prosecuting that particularly aggressively, yes.
Okay, but I mean, is there an investigative aspect to it? Is there?
We use the investigators that are in our office, but they also communicate with other DA's offices, because often, someone who's stealing cars in Albany is also stealing cars in Schenectady or stealing cars in Rensselaer, and it helps us sort of identify, sometimes they're doing it in a coordinated fashion, usually not, usually these are just thieves.
I mean, I just, you know, for an attorney and a half, there must be a lot of work out there.
Yeah, it's a minor amount that goes to the supervisor, that, the head of the Vehicular Crimes Unit supervises the ADA, who's doing most of that
Okay.
prosecution.
All right.
And
Thank you.
car theft has gone way up recently.
Thank you. I think we have a motion from Mr. Feeney.
Second.
Great. Thank you. Second by Mr. Peters. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Item 16.
And item 16 is the GIVE grant. That's the Gun Involved Violence Elimination Partnership with DCJS and Albany Police Department. That's for $260,055. This provides funds for 2 attorneys and 2 investigators. And with the rise of gun violence that we've seen in Albany and surrounding counties, the point of the grant is to have us focus on that and to work with the Crime Analysis Center and the Crime Gun Intelligence Center to figure out who the particular characters are on the street who are really engaging in this sort of crime and aggressively prosecute them and try to reduce the amount of plea bargaining that we do with regard to their case.
Okay. Mr. Horn, are these new items? Or is this continuing funding of existing items?
Continuing funding. This
Okay.
grant's been around, I think, for 7 years.
Okay. Any questions from Mr. Horn? And a motion, Mr. Peter, thank you. Second by Mr. Feeney, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. Item 17.
This is the CARP grant, which is Crimes Against Revenue Program. It provides funds for an attorney, a secretary, and an investigator. That's in the amount of $299,710. It is state-funded, and the idea here is to prosecute crimes against revenue. So if someone's a tax cheat or an insurance cheat, we go after them and try to recoup that money for the state. Every year that we've worked with this grant, we've recovered more than the cost of the grant, so it's a good investment by the state.
Excellent. Any questions? Mr. Feeney?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Peter, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Passes unanimously. Any opposed? Great, thank you. Item 18.
Number 18 is the ATP grant. That's the Aid to Prosecution Grant from DCJS, in the amount of $176,540. The point of this grant is to target repeat and serious felony offenders, repeat offenders, violent felony offenders, and again, try to reduce the amount of plea bargaining and retain qualified prosecutors to go after these particularly bothersome defendants.
Okay, questions? Mr. Kuhn, motion. Mr. Peters, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Items 2, 3, 4, and 8 are a table that request of sponsor. Brings us to item 5 for Bill Reinhardt's public hearing on local law L, the Nature and Historic Preserve System. Bill, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, is that item 5?
Four.
Yeah, what I'd like to say here is just that we already have some facilities that are open space of various kinds, like Hanley Pond and Warner Lake. What we're doing here is we are creating a sort of a consistent forest preserve model based on what some other counties in New York have done. And we are also explicitly talking about the various benefits of forest land, whether it's carbon sequestration, recreation. There's a whole gamut of things that basically it was kind of like we put in everything in here that we've seen other communities use as justification for their forests and lands and open space. And one of the reasons we're doing this is we understand that there are state and federal funds that are going to be available for supporting this kind of effort, and we feel as though having a forest preserve in place and codified the way we're doing makes us available for some of those funds if, and it could be either for, doing things with the existing lands, but it could also be to add lands as part of a comprehensive green space strategy. Now, Jeff Furley and I worked on this together, and we are both familiar with some of the things going on with Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy and other groups in our part of the county. And, you know, we see that this could be a way for any of the towns, or even the city of Albany, to collaborate with the county to make something that is sort of greater than the sum of its parts by having parcels contiguous to each other that, you know, some might be county, some might be town, some might be Law Hudson or Scenic Hudson. And the idea is we're creating a tool that allows us to make these things work together for the better benefit of all citizens in the county. So that's basically what we're doing here. And this is just the action for the public hearing.
Any questions?
This is just for the public hearing?
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
It just occurred to me, and I think I read part of it before. I wasn't aware that you could not possess or consume alcoholic beverages. So you can't go to Lawson Lake, have a picnic, and bring a six-pack of beer or a bottle of wine.
You cannot,
You cannot.
pursuant to current policy and the general use plan and everything
Okay.
published by the county.
What about smoking marijuana?
You can smoke marijuana anywhere you're allowed to smoke legally a cigarette. So I don't know, I presume most playgrounds and parks are restricted for cigarette smoking, so it would be similarly restricted for marijuana
Well,
smoking.
should we put it in there?
Well, it's already covered in state law, so
Well-
I mean, it wouldn't make any difference, but
Well, I mean, you're out in an open field there, is that something we want to happen at Lawson Lake?
well, if it's already illegal though, that's the,
But if it's not illegal in an open field, you know.
well, it's illegal in parklands, is my understanding. In New York State, parklands, playgrounds, anything like that, it's already illegal. I mean, we can certainly,
Rebecca, you might want to just explain to the committee all the work you put into this, looking at all existing code, all existing.
No, I
rules.
just, those were two, it surprised me to understand that someone couldn't have a picnic with a bottle of wine, okay? I found it surprising. If that's the policy, that's fine. I think you ought to treat marijuana the same way.
Well,
That's,
I don't understand. You seem like you're arguing that people should be able to have a bottle of wine. So
Well-
if your attitude is they should be able to have a bottle of wine, but you regret that they can't, why are you trying to then say that they can't smoke pot? Which
Well,
I'm
because I
unclear
think
which
it ought
way
to-
you're going.
I think
Do
it
you
ought to be
should less
treated on
restrictive
a
or
parallel,
restrictive?
I think it ought to be treated on a parallel basis, that's all. If you cannot have a six-pack of beer, you don't want somebody having a pot party in a field at Lawson Lake. That's all.
Can I ask a question? So you put these prohibited acts, and the thing in there about alcohol, is that already something that's in the state law?
alcohol is permitted in parklands across the state. Like, you can go to Moreau Park and bring in alcohol or whatever.
Okay.
It's just banned in these two parks, Anley and Lawson's Lake. That's the ongoing current situation. We're not looking to change anything from what already exists here for the prohibited acts. We were just looking to codify what does exist. And we were notified, that's why it's a change for the open fires and the grilling and overnight camping. We found out some things after the fact that were actually permitted, which were not technically permitted pursuant to the general use plans. So that's all these updates are. I mean, I would defer to the sponsor in terms of changing the law to add marijuana, but it is already banned in New York State, so I don't know, it would be kind of redundant.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So to understand, I think what Dennis's point is that like, the only thing we're excluding are things that are not excluded by the state but excluded by the county, and anything that's already excluded by the state is already excluded by the state, so there's no reason to repeat it.
Yes.
Right, okay, that's basically what I was getting.
All right.
Well, where in the state law does it say that you can't smoke cannabis in a parkland?
Well, you can't smoke anything I mean, if you go to like the crossings or something, you'll see the signs all over because they passed a law several years ago, well, longer than that now, that you can't be around parklands or playgrounds or certain types of facilities where children often play and that sort of thing, because it's protect young
Well,
ones.
actually, I think I remember several years ago, before you got here, we passed
I
something
thought
that
we
may
passed something
have
prohibiting smoking in our parks.
prohibiting smoking.
Also vaping, I think.
Yeah, and you're currently only permitted in New York State to smoke cannabis or marijuana wherever you can legally smoke cigarettes or vape. So, well, vaping's slightly different, but the smoking cigarettes certainly. Okay.
Oh, that was
I'm being-
apartment buildings or something, right?
Well, that's the local law we passed a couple of
Yeah.
years ago,
But
yes.
does this include anything other than Lawson Lake and the,
Anley Pond.
Anley Pond?
Not currently. We look in the future to potentially add further parcels to the preserve system.
Okay, that's what I was kind of thinking about from a, may not be a parkland, but, okay.
So this kind of creates the structure, Bill, right, to add additional parcels?
We want to be positioned if
Yeah,
federal and state opportunities.
okay. Any other questions? No, great. Mr. Fee?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Peter, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Great, thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. Where are we? Which
Local law and the public hearing.
is, okay, public hearing, on local law M.
Mr. Moreno is here.
Okay, Mr. Moriello, welcome.
I know, Granicus screwed up the numbering, that happens not infrequently, unfortunately. We are on local law M, the public hearing.
So that last one wasn't relief zone, because there's a couple of L's.
Wait, it was the public hearing for L.
Right, but there's more than that.
Matt, I'm not trying.
No.
Well, for 2022, for 2022, the other one for,
Is one the original and one the amended? Mr. Moreno? Is one the original and one the amended?
What you showed me.
yes, that was for 2021. At the beginning of each calendar year, we have to restart with the lettering, but the local laws can exist across
Oh,
multiple
there's a,
years.
yeah, L for 2021 is the TID.
Is the housing.
Or housing, yeah.
Housing.
Well, 4 and 10, Sure. 4 and 10 will say there's local law L for 2022.
Because one is the public hearing and one is the local law itself. We can't move the local law itself until we pass the public hearing.
Oh, I see.
That's your
Okay,
part.
okay, all right, gotcha. All right.
Because like, I'm seeing there's a couple
Yeah, I know what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
that says like, you can't from a state
No.
law unless there's.
I didn't get it. Thank you.
Mr. Moriello,
We ready?
please dive in.
Some internal discussions going on here, so I didn't want to interrupt. All right, last
They're two separate things.
Last month, I presented local law M to the committee, and there were some concerns by some of the members. And so I just wanted to let you know, I really listened to what you had to say, took into consideration your comments. And so I went back and I thought, well, what I need to do, and I understand, Mr. Kuhn, you made a comment about passing out a flyer to, have our county employees pass out flyers to individuals that are obtaining different types of services from our departments like mental health and youth and family services and such. And I thought about that and I thought, well, if an individual is, if one of our employees is going to have some contact and provide services to someone with mental health, is it really a good idea to give them one of these notices? And probably not. Probably not. So what I've done is I've given you two copies of our amended version. One copy is a clean copy that has just the language that we're proposing. The other copy will have brackets of the language that we've eliminated, and what we've added, we've underlined. So you can tell the two. I mean, it's a little bit easier for you to read.
And just for clarification, brackets mean it was removed and underline means it was added.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Oh, I was just clarifying what the brackets versus underline means.
Yes.
Or nobody has the one with the underlines and the brackets?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Whoops.
I don't know what this one is, the thicker one.
The thicker one, one of them has the underlining. One of them, the thicker one would have the old language with the new language added that is bracketed and underlined. And the other one is just a clean version, so it's easier for you to read. So, I mean, you brought up a good point, I thought about it, but then I thought to myself, okay, we have an issue here in Albany County with illegal guns and the use of illegal guns in the county. How are we going to address this? I mean, other legislation that has been presented to us always addresses what it does is it really makes it more difficult for the legal gun owner, and the legal gun owner isn't the issue. Well, 2 days ago, or actually yesterday, our DA sent out a press release. And so I made copies of this press release, and you can just read the title. It says, "Albany's gun crime isn't driven by legally owned guns." So what I'm trying to do, and we'd like to do, and I think our legislature should do, is do something to try and target those people that are in possession of illegal guns. So I went to the chief law enforcement officer in the county,
Open your phone
the sheriff.
and unlock it with face recognition.
Oh, my phone just went off all by itself.
Sometimes face
Somebody
recognition too. Creepy.
So I went to the chief law enforcement officer in the county, I went to Sheriff Apple, and the reason why the amendment came out so late on Friday, it took a while for me to go back and forth with the sheriff to work this out and to get the language right and to get his approval and such. So Friday afternoon of last week, we finally had it squared away. So what the sheriff said to me was, he said there are 3 things that we can do. Number one, what we can do is we can still put the signs in all the county buildings like we had in the old legislation. So that still remains. The other thing that we can do is we can, let me take out my copy here so I can follow along. The other thing that we can do is we can have an illegal gun tip line. And the sheriff suggested that he can man it, his department would man it, it wouldn't cost us anything. So if anyone were to feel that someone was in possession of a gun that they should not be in possession of, they could call the sheriff's department. So then my question to the sheriff was, okay, I'm going to call in and I'm going to say that Mark Grimm has an illegal gun. Well, Mark Grimm really has never gotten in trouble before, and he really isn't known, and they're not just going to storm his house and look for the illegal gun. They're going to try and build a case and see if there's justification for them to actually look for this gun. Where if I said Paul Bergdorf has an illegal gun, well, now that's trouble. And they're going to say, okay, this person has history with us, and this is probably the case. And they will build a case, they will look into it, and they will see whether or not Mr. Bergdorf actually does have an illegal gun. So the tip line is something that he said he thought would work. The other thing he said was the sheriff's department does a lot of outreach, and there are other counties that do outreach. So we were talking about, and there's legislation out there to make it mandatory for people to have locks on their guns. Well, why don't we provide these locks free of charge to gun owners? So when the sheriff is out doing community outreach, whether it's at a fair, it could be at a fire department, it could be up at Watson's Lake, they can have these and they could give them to gun owners, and gun owners can use them for their guns. And I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. There is a financial impact statement, but I'll get to that last. And then the last part of this is a gun buyback program. Right now, it's currently done like twice a year. We'll do a gun buyback program, but now what we would do is we would do this on a regular basis. So I asked him, well, how much should we offer for these guns? And he felt $200 for like a semi-automatic pistol or a revolver, and $150 for a long gun. And it's noted in here that they do have to be functioning. There was someone that took advantage of New York State's gun buyback program with Ghost Gun Parts, and they made $21,000 in profit on this. But no, you can't do that. These have to be functioning. So now, because of what's been added, and at the advice of the sheriff, obviously now this is going to have a fiscal impact on the county. So on the last page, you'll see that we have provided a fiscal impact statement. So you can see what the cost is going to be. So again, this was done at the advice of Sheriff Apple. He also said to me that to get things started, if we wanted to get things started right away, he'd provide us with $4,000 out of his drug seizure account as seed money to move this along quicker.
Just to jump in for 30 seconds, the fiscal impact is the last page on the
Clean version.
clean version.
Wait, what is this? What is this?
This is a press release that David Sawyers sent out yesterday.
What law is, there's like references to this law, what law are we talking?
It's a state law.
The red flag law he was responding to.
It was a big thing yesterday with like the Hochul debate and stores and.
So this is our position, is not an emotional response, this is a factual one, this is the GA?
Mr. Peter had his hand up. Are you okay for now?
And so keep in mind that
Okay.
both the sheriff and the DA feel that, the issue here in Albany County, the problem is with illegal guns. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to address that problem in the county.
Thank you, and Ms. Morello, thank you for taking a lot of these suggestions. I see a lot of good in this bill and things like that. I had a quick question, if that's okay.
Mhm.
I'm going to be voting to move this out to public hearing, so, this is not a loaded one. We talked, sort of the illegal guns, the warning. One, it doesn't seem like illegal guns are like completely defined on there. So for example,
I'll take a shot at maybe your question if you say.
I mean,
adding your
yeah,
question.
I'm okay if you want to try, yeah.
So we've had some discussions, Patrick and Rebecca, there's been some discussion as to what's the definition of illegal guns, illegal firearms. So the question comes down to, do we go to change the notice, which I looked at, because the format it becomes very difficult to change that. Or do we just add a definition? And quite honestly, I think it's just easier to add a definition of illegal firearms, probably keyed into section 265 of the penal law.
Right.
And then, if it's illegal under New York state law, it would be illegal under our legislation.
Right.
If New York state law gets overturned in some fashion, and that's so be it, but we're not in the middle of that fight.
Understood.
So I would suggest, after discussion with both of them, if there's an agreement from the chair and the committee that we as council should be allowed to add a definition of illegal firearm, probably keyed into New York state penal law.
I would also say, for me, instead of having the definition of gun is possessed legally, remove that, because it seems to say that there's only two ways a gun is possessed illegally, but we know there's several of them, right? There's the SAFE Act, there's other things like that make it illegal, so we don't want to seem like we're oversimplifying it, and then explaining it. I would say simplify it and then an explanation would make it cleaner, but I understand your point. That was it, I'm good.
Ms. Whalen?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ricker?
Thank you. Just a quick question. So I'm reading the fiscal impact. So basically,
Yes.
this initial $30,000, $900 investment,
Yes.
it's going to remove, theoretically, I shouldn't say remove, it'll pay up to 100 pistols, right?
Yes.
In your research, did you check with any other municipalities? I know the city of Cohoes, for instance, has had gone back by that programs in the past. City of Albany has. So when
Well, they've only done them like on certain days.
I know, let me just finish though. My point is though, how many pistols theoretically in your research did they get back, return? So how far is that 100 pistols gonna last? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's a good question, because I spoke to the sheriff about that as well. And he said, when Pastor Mueller has had these gun buyback programs, he said there was one day when they only had like 5 pistols come in.
Okay.
There was another time when they had 30.
Just hit or miss.
So exactly, it's hit or miss. So, I mean, this is to start it off. Let's see how it goes. If it's very successful, we can continue to fund this and we can move along with this. If not, we've done something. We're trying to address the problem, and we've done something to do that.
Okay, thank you.
One other quick thing, I appreciate the fiscal, and I would just add that, every gun that comes off the street, if this is, successful, is about 10 to 12 cop hours minimum that's reduced, and that's at approximately $100 an hour. So, you know, just from a very fiscal perspective, if we're getting any guns off, let alone the emotional impact and the crisis that we're avoiding. So I would just, you know, put that into perspective.
Any other questions, Mr. Longo? Yes, Mr. Mann?
Frank, do you still have, I'm looking at the old one, C, the initial consultation, is that still in your final version?
No, that's gone. That's been struck.
Thank you.
Make a motion to move the public hearing.
I would second that, Madam Chair.
Second, I'm going to let Mr. Ricard second this time.
Fair enough. It's good to share.
Okay, all in
Thank you.
favor?
I'll second.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item, again, we know we're confused, is the wireless surcharge. And of course, Mr. Joyce. Item 7 in the agenda, for those trying to.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
This is the surcharge, local law. We had the public hearing. We didn't have anyone come, I believe, to speak in favor or against. But this is a necessary surcharge to improve our 911 operations in Albany County and shore up the infrastructure, modernize it, and keep people safe. So if we can move this out with a good recommendation tonight.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Berger.
I just want to make a couple of points. You know, I've been here 7 years. This is the most conflicting law I think I've ever had to vote on, to be honest with you. Because I think you can call it a surcharge, you can call it a tax, it is what it is. We're proposing going from 35 cents to 95 cents per line if you're a family that has 5 lines, and we've heard a member of this committee that has 15 lines on their bill. You're talking about, almost $15 a month, but, it's significant. It's a regressive tax. It hits everybody, regardless of your, financial status and your ability to pay. And why are we doing this? We're doing this because the state of New York is not paying us the fair share of the 911 support money. So I asked our troop, I should say, I was going to say troops, but troop, the Association of Counties did a resolution this past fall asking the state of New York to return all the 911 cellular money to the general, that it was putting in the general fund, back to the counties. And the most recent numbers are that they collected $240,643,000, and New York State kept $100,765,000 of that money. So if we got our fair share from the state, we might not be facing this, okay? So we're asking our people to do double taxation, if you will. We're paying it to the state, we're not getting it, so we're gonna tax you again for a 911 system which in several areas of this county doesn't even work, especially in mine and Joe O'Brien's and Jennifer's area. There just isn't a cellular network. So that's trouble. I have absolute confidence in Sheriff Apple to invest in the ensure proper maintenance of the existing systems and the build out of 911 as it goes from 4G to 5G. He's the guy to do it, and I want him to have the money he needs. So I'm conflicted because I'm asking my people to pay twice for something we're not getting, but yet I know there is a bigger need for 911. The other part of this that I found a little troubling, and it came to my attention today, and I apologize for not having raised it earlier, but I asked the question at one of these earlier meetings. Frank had asked, and we had had earlier discussions with the sheriff about, could you phase this in over a couple of years? And we were told, no. The home rule law doesn't allow you to do that.
We didn't ask for that.
Excuse me, I'm talking down, okay? We asked, so we asked if we could phase it in, and we said we were told the home rule law did not allow us to do that, okay? We asked if we could cap the number of phones per residence, and we were told the home rule law did not allow us to do that. Let me read you some language out of the home rule law. The Albany County Legislature is authorized to adopt, amend, or repeal local laws to impose a surcharge in addition to the surcharge established imposed under Section 363 in an amount not to exceed 95 cents per access line. Not to exceed. So we could go from 35 to 55, and 55 to 75, and 75 to 95, if we wanted to. And it's there. It's black letter law. It also says that no such surcharge shall be imposed by more than 75 exchange access lines per customer location. So I guess you probably, could you have a bifurcated limit, 4 for a residential customer, 75 for a commercial customer? I don't know the answer to that. Okay? And this act shall take effect immediately and shall expire and be deemed repealed in 10 years. So that means we have 10 years to adjust the law. We are given broad authority over 10 years to figure out how we want. We have the ability. Now, I'm sorry I didn't look at this first, and I relied upon what was said here, that the home rule law, said we had to go to 95 cents. And the bottom line for me, and this is where I'm really conflicted, is I want Sheriff Apple to have what he needs to do the 911 program the way it should be. But do we need to go to 95 cents all at once? Do we? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out for consideration. If someone wants to move this to the floor tonight the way it is, I'll vote for it without recommendation, because I don't know yet how I'm going to vote on the end vote. But I just think everybody sort of deserved to know that there was an alternative path here, which was not chosen. But maybe the greater good is the support of the 911 system, but in these times of inflation and cost increases,
Okay.
maybe a buck a line is a little.
I'm sorry to
much.
interrupt.
I'm sorry, I'm done.
Time challenged.
Yep.
We're a half hour into our next meeting already.
I'm done.
Mr. Collins, I think, wanted to address some of your points.
I
but-
would say vote on the side of safety, of course, and the enhancement of the sheriff's facilities. And also note that we budgeted for this already. David, the 95 cent?
For 2023.
Yeah. So plans were in motion for the last year. I feel like it was Legislator DeMalowitz who spoke of public safety and said, let's go for the 95, because it's going to benefit.
So, I mean, if it's a done deal, it's a done deal, but I want people to know that there were steps that we could have taken. So,
Peter?
Madam Chair, if there are no further comments, I would make a motion to positively recommend this and move it out.
Second.
Sorry, Mr. Grimm has his hand up.
Yeah, if I could speak, Madam Chair, is okay? Of course we need to fund 911. It's one of the most important things government does. I can't think of something more critical than a life and death situation. The question is, what should be the source of the money? Do we have to rely on a pretty substantial tax on cell phones, which, by the way, affects everyone? Poor people have a lot of cell phones, just as rich people do. So it is a regressive tax in that regard. And can we, I feel like it should be part of the budget every year because it's one of the most critical needs that the county has. Now, where are we going to get this money? We have a way of coming up with money. I'll give you a great example. $4 million in the Green Energy Act and $3 million in economic development. We've had 2 line items this year alone that were $7 million increase.
Wrap it up.
So I just think, I don't think we've adequately considered what other sources of money are out there to fund what's needed.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Nothing else, we have a motion already seconded on the table to move this forward.
Just a point of information, you made a motion and a second for a favorable recommendation. If I want to vote for it without recommendation, do I have to vote no? Or can I just
Yes.
say
Yes.
I'm voting for?
Because that's the motion, for favorable
Motion's
recommendation.
favorable.
If it fails, you
You don't
can
want
do
to
a
vote on
recommendation.
favorably, you gotta vote.
You can move it, you can move to a motion to move it out with an unfavorable recommendation.
We already have a
If this
motion.
Should this motion
Yeah,
fail?
but I mean, I just want to be able to vote my conscience, that's all. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet.
You abstain?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, local law L, for the natural and historic preserve system is tabled pending public hearing. Local law M, also tabled pending public hearing. Item 12, public hearing on local law O, codification. Do we have any discussion on this? Or do we just?
So we're approaching the public hearing. This is 4 years in the making, Brandon? Maybe 5?
Maybe a little longer than that.
Yeah, so,
Phil Steck originally made a resolution.
so when you adopt this, eventually you can all take the credit for it because your names will be on it. But we're hitting the finish line. This is ultimately, we didn't bring the book with us, but it's larger than a phone book. It's the codification of all the relevant resolutions and local laws that the county's passed over the years. And it will need modification down the road, amendments to it, but what is in your packet in the agenda is the unresolved questions, is that a fair way to say it?
That's not in the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, the
What
ones
we've-
that were resolved.
Yep, what we've given you is Schedule A, which is a list of code changes. This is 7 pages, which includes all of the changes that were made. Most of them are made, like, the planning department is now economic, whatever, things like that. We put in language saying that we will at some point come up with a fee structure for all of the fees that are contained within the code, going back to like the 70s, so that things are no longer a fee of $5, that sort of thing. We deferred any contentious issues, things that could be problematic discussion-wise, that people might want to further discuss, really. We deferred that for later. It'll be much easier to update the code once the code is enacted. Like significantly easier, because you don't have to cite all of the local laws that preceded it. So you can look through this, the list of code changes. If you have any questions, we also have a list of deferred questions that you can follow up with us on. I did give this out, yep. Oh, did you not get one? Maybe I did. So if you have any questions, you certainly can follow up, but it's pretty straightforward. It's the laws as they currently exist, just all in one code, so they're much easier. They'll now be able to be accessed online, and they're in a code book. It'll make things much easier for research and whatnot.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Berger.
I have one observation from our staff who started to actually read the book and got through 60 pages. Evidently, the version that was put online doesn't have the table of contents.
It does, yes.
Oh, you did?
It's just not the version that was printed, a PDF from online does not have the index.
Okay.
The actual code online doesn't have the index.
When the code goes...
The index is, just to clarify, I spoke with Rebecca, the index is being provided to us basically staff and the legislature, if you want it, but it's not for general consumption, just because of the way it's set up in the system. But we have that, should have it on my emails right now today. So obviously, once it's adopted, the index and everything is going to all be on the general code site. You go on the general code site in Rochester, and then all my yards is right there.
I guess my second follow-up question, thank you for resolving that, but is this going to be word searchable?
Yes.
So it will be. So what we saw electronically, which was a PDF, which was not word searchable.
Have you ever saw the charter?
Have you seen the-
Albany County Charter on the
Or Colony Town Code is already online. It's exactly the same format. It's the same
Okay.
company.
Well, thank you.
If you look through the charter online,
Is that a
it's the
motion,
same.
Mr. Peters?
It was a motion, and I'm very happy that this is going to be online.
Yes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item 11 is table pending public hearing for local law. For this, and I think we're done.
Motion to adjourn, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Sorry for the late hour, everybody.
Thank you,
For
Madam
your
Chair.
patience.